60 years ago, I drove over to Cambridge from Oxford, where I was a research student, to see the model of DNA. And of course, that just opened the door to everything. I think that no sooner did I get back to Oxford than I started to work on the coding problem, theoretically, of course, and I carried that interest of the early genetics with me. Let me just say that at the time, the establishment was consisted of biochemists, and none of them had any appreciation of what the nature of the discovery, nor had they any sense of what it might accomplish. As you know, molecular biology, which was a subject that didn't exist, in fact wasn't a subject, we used to call it a way of life. So it in fact ramified throughout the whole of biology. And in almost every decade since 1953, there have been major discoveries that opened up all the problems of organisms. First, the simple ones of bacteria and phages, and more lately, multicellular organisms. And I think that once sequencing had been invented, we could in fact determine the complete genetic composition of essentially any organism, although doing the human genome in the 1980s was seen as an amazingly difficult task. But as everybody knows now, we will have school children sequencing their genomes in the near future. The technology has improved. The question now, since for those of us that are still concerned with the problem of how genes affect the phenotype of the organism, the problem is now what organism to work on. I came to Cambridge with the idea of joining this group, and I came in at the end of 1956. And I spent almost 35 years working for the MRC. And when I came, it was a marvelous organization. It was run by a man called Harold Himsworth, who I think had the strong sense that he would gamble and put his faith in the small unit in Cambridge, which had the forbidding name of the Unit for the Macromolecular Structure of Living Systems, later shortened to molecular biology when we decided to change the name. And I think that was a rather daring thing. If I recall correctly, at that time, we didn't belong to any government department. We reported to the Privy Council, and the annual report of the MRC was directly to Parliament, and we got our budget directly from Parliament. That may be a risky thing to do now these days, but in the 60s, of course, it all changed. And I think that the laboratory, which was created in Cambridge and began its expansion in 1962, was in fact the spearhead of this work throughout the whole of the world. And it had a culture which I think made it very easy to go from one place. It was a very open laboratory. There were no hierarchical people in it, and we all had a rather contemptuous view of administration and all the things now which we take for granted now is the way institutions operate today. And of course, we were small and quite cheap when one comes to consider it. So I think we can credit the MRC for creating this amazing vehicle. It's not clear whether they were driving it or the vehicle was driving them, but the partnership worked extremely well. And of course, I served on the council myself for 2 periods, a very non-trivial occupation, because it's sometimes considered in myself having to record my vote against things which were usually taken unanimously. But that's another story. But I think the issue is now, not only here, but in all places, what should be our priorities for the future? And I can tell you that I see it completely clearly. We should work on humans. So human biology should be the top priority. Now, why do I say that? I say that because in the last 50 years, we have been given all the tools we need in order to bring the investigations to ourselves. And we should do it because we are a unique species on this planet. We're the only species that has invented science, and we're the only species that can think about the future. So I think that this gives us a priority we richly deserve. Now, how can we do human biology? Because, as you know, human experimentation is illegal. But let me tell you, everybody's doing it. Nature is doing it. The government is doing it. McDonald's is doing it. Everybody's doing it. You're doing it to your children are doing it to you. So we have all of these experiments going on, but now we have the tools to see what has actually happened. And I believe then that human biology is where all the really exciting discoveries will be made in the future. I think that it is linked not only to medicine, but linked to all of human activity. And I think then that this will offer the correct challenge to the next generation of scientists. As you know, there has been a rather bad effect of this focusing on these big projects like sequencing the human genome, in which we now have a science which resembles a corporation, not a laboratory, but a corporation in which there is a lot of top-down planning. It's what I call 3M science, not because it's done by that company, but the 3M stands for money, machines, and management. And the preoccupation with all of that has, I think, lost a lot of the possibilities that we will be allowed to create innovations. Everybody now wants absolutely risk-free futures, so that means we have to know the results before we are given the money to do the research. And there are many things that I could say about that. Well, I hope that the Medical Research Council will find some corner of its activities where they will allow some flexibility in the proposals for this new research. In fact, I had a very interesting experience while I was with the MRC, is that they decided, because of all the financial problems of the universities, that people were being prematurely retired. In fact, no retirement can be too premature. And so I was made chairman of a committee which would give fellowships to young scientists so that they could pursue their careers, because many of them didn't have proper jobs. And I'm very pleased to say tonight that two of the people are here, Paul Nurse and Kay Davies. They are people that would have, had we left structures as they were, without this possibility that they could be funded for independent work, they would have been lost to this thing. So I do believe that now, where everybody wants to fund big groups, that I hope the MRC will recognize that there are still talented people. Most of them are young, of course, and that because they have the advantage of being ignorant, they will do good research. Thank you very much.